Studying longer doesn't mean that you're learning better. That doesn't mean that you're working harder. That doesn't mean that you're learning more things.
Welcome to Quirky French Podcast, the podcast that helps you speak more confidently, feel more focused, and be more in control of your French learning journey. Prêt? C'est parti!
Salut, salut, coucou, and welcome to episode 16 of Quirky French Podcast, the podcast where I'm going to share with you all that I know to help you reach your goal and study French with confidence. My name is Naima from quirkyfrench.com, and today's episode is going to be short and sweet. I'm going to help you rethink how to use your time for studying with one very simple idea. Perhaps you wonder how to fit studying around your busy schedule, or perhaps you study for hours on end and it doesn't really feel like you're improving that much. Or perhaps you simply want to find new ways to learn and to, make the most of your precious time. In any case, I strongly recommend that you listen to this episode and really apply this basic but key idea, key approach, as it can really transform your learning experience. And this new way to learn and to use time is going to help you study more effectively. It's going to help you be more focused. It's going to help you manage your energy better. And because of all that, you're going to be able to reach your goal simply more easily, more quickly, and, in a much more relaxed manner. Okay, so how can you rethink and how can you use your time more effectively for studying? The key here is to forget about this idea of amount of time and instead to simply focus on the idea of task. Plan your learning around your tasks, not your time. Plan your learning around units of learning, units of knowledge. Let's just call it like that, if we can kind of quantify knowledge and skill and learning. With this new approach, your aim is to complete one item of learning, okay? Whether that takes you 5 minutes or 5 hours. Now, let's have a look at an unrelated example, okay? Think of a basic task, like clearing the dishes. Now, there could be a day where you've got a few guests and it will take you quite a long time to clear the dishes and clean the dishes and so on. But now, let's just think of a day where you're just on your own, you've ordered a pizza, and all you have to do to clear the dishes is to throw the box in the bin and that's it. It literally takes you 20 seconds and then you're good to go. And in both cases, you've basically completed the exact same task, but it will have taken a different amount of time. And the time that it takes is completely irrelevant. What's relevant here is what you have to do in order to get the job done. So really just forget about the time that it takes, but think about what needs to be done in order to complete the task. Now, I know my example kind of sounds obvious, but when it comes to studying, it's actually exactly the same process and you really need to apply the same logic. What you don't want to do is to tell yourself that you're going to give yourself a certain amount of time. Like, okay, today I'm going to sit down and I'm going to study for 1 hour. Imagine that you're in the middle of something, you're doing a bit of work, but then time's up. And then you leave your desk as it is, you get up and you go get your dinner, but you haven't actually processed your learning in full. Okay? It's really about giving yourself the opportunity to end your learning on a fully processed, fully kind of rounded up unit of learning. Okay? Instead, you're going to be a lot more productive if you tell yourself, well, today I'm going to give myself this particular task that I'm going to do. For example, today I'm revising the imparfait, okay? And you'll find that on some days, for example, you could be studying for 5 minutes, while on other days, you could be studying for half an hour. And studying one item, one unit of learning for 5 minutes and doing it in full is just as powerful as studying another item that will take you 20 minutes. Does that make sense? Studying longer doesn't mean that you're learning better. That doesn't mean that you're working harder. That doesn't mean that you're learning more things. So again, think in terms of tasks to do and what it takes you to complete that task. Now, what if a task is likely to take a really long time to complete and you know that you're not going to be able to complete it in one go? Well, usually large tasks like this are actually a mix of different subtasks. So you need to break it down into segments, but you need to be really strategic about it. Okay? Have a look at what's involved in that large task and then complete those micro tasks one at a time. But what's important is that you are deliberate in a way that you divide the work. Okay? Again, don't divide the work in equal segments of time. You have to divide the work by having a look at what's involved in those subtasks, in those micro tasks. For example, let's imagine that you're writing some piece of paper. You know that it's going to be a big job. So you're going to divide the tasks like so. Day 1, you simply plan your ideas, you organize your ideas, and you write your outline. On day 2, you write your draft. And then when you're done with that, you move on to day 3, where you write your improved version. And then when you're done with that, on day 4, you could move to proofreading. And you can really see how each segment stands on its own. You know, as long as at the end of that session, you've processed the learning and you've completed a step fully, you're good to go. Okay? So the idea here is that it's better to do smaller tasks, one single task every day, than to sit down and to assume that you're going to do, 2 hours of learning and either not really take anything in because you're going to be burned out and not really able to take anything in, or to start to work on a big job and not really finish it. So there you have it, just this simple idea around time. Try and think about how you use your own time. Try and think of your study routine and how you've been using time, how you've been looking at time and the amount of work that you do and how many units of learning you're able to complete in full. Have a look at that and just start to think, what is my routine like? How have I been using time until now? Have I been looking at my work from a time-orientated perspective, or have I been task-orientated? And how is that working out? And you'll find that by making that simple shift, this is really going to change how you organize your schedule and your routine. Et voilà pour aujourd'hui. That's it for today's episode. If you like the sound of this episode and this podcast, it would mean so much if you left a little comment or if you rated it on Spotify. This would really help me identify what you like the most and help me prepare even more content like this for the future. So I wish you a beautiful week full of organization and really nicely planned tasks. I already look forward to catching up with you next week for another episode of Quirky French Podcast. And as always, in the meantime, keep learning, keep growing, and keep it quirky. Allez, on se reparle la semaine prochaine. Salut, salut. Bye.